The Coalition's response was swift and merciless. When they realized they could not capture the human fleet, they decided to make humanity pay a different price. Across the galaxy, Coalition forces began targeting human civilian populations with systematic brutality that shocked even their own soldiers. On the mining world of Proxima 7, Coalition troops rounded up human families and forced them into transport ships. On the agricultural planet of New Harvest, human workers were separated from their alien colleagues and marched into detention camps. The message was clear: surrender the fleet or watch your people suffer. Commander Kim Ji-won stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the reports flood in from across Coalition space. Her face was stone, but her crew could see the rage burning in her eyes. Chief Engineer Yoon Hyun-woo had never seen his commander so angry, not even during the darkest days of the First War. "Ma'am," reported the communications officer, "Coalition forces have taken over 3,000 human civilians hostage. They're demanding we power down our ships and surrender within 24 hours. And if we don't," Ji-won asked, though she already knew the answer, "they'll start executing prisoners, 100 every hour until we comply." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew that many of these prisoners were the families of the crew members who had been sleeping for 200 years. Sons and daughters, grandchildren and great-grandchildren they had never met but had sworn to protect. Captain Lee Taemin, who had been serving as liaison between the fleet and Earth's surface, stepped forward. "Commander, there's something you need to know. Something we've been keeping secret even from Aegis 7. Ji-won turned to look at him surprised. "What do you mean?" "The Coalition thinks the Indomitable and her sister ships are all that's left of human military power," Taemin explained. "But they're wrong. We never stopped building. We never stopped preparing." He activated a hidden console that had been disguised as part of the wall decorations. Suddenly, the tactical displays showed something that made even the experienced crew gasp in amazement. Hidden throughout Earth's solar system were not just the 7 ships they already knew about, but dozens more. "The Luna shipyards have been operating in secret for 150 years, Taemin continued. "The Mars Industrial Complex has been producing weapons and ships behind a holographic disguise. The asteroid belt is filled with hidden bases and manufacturing facilities." Admiral Ryu Jae-won, the fleet's tactical officer, studied the new data with growing excitement. "These ships, they're smaller than the main fleet, but there are so many of them, 63 vessels total, all equipped with the latest technology." "There's more," Taemin said. He touched another control and the display showed Earth itself. But this was not the Earth the Coalition remembered. The planet's surface was covered with defensive installations that had been hidden for decades. Orbital platforms that looked like space stations were actually massive weapons platforms. Even the moon had been turned into a fortress. Engineer Lee Suman, who had been working to unlock the Indomitable's full capabilities, looked up from her station with wonder. "Sir, if these readings are correct, Earth isn't just defended. It's a military fortress that could fight off the entire Coalition fleet." But the best news was yet to come. General Han Dong-wook appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from a command center hidden deep beneath Earth's surface. He was an old man, but his eyes were sharp and determined. "Commander Ji-won," he said with a smile, "it's good to see you awake at last. I have something to show you." The display changed to show space around Earth, but from a different perspective. What the Coalition saw as a peaceful, defeated world was actually the most heavily armed planet in the galaxy. Hidden weapons covered every continent. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like a metal ring. And in the outer solar system, massive ships emerged from camouflaged positions. "We've been busy while you were sleeping," General Han continued. "Every human who served on Coalition ships brought back intelligence. Every human who worked in their factories learned their technology. Every human who cleaned their buildings mapped their weaknesses. For 200 years we've been preparing for this day." Dr. Song Yuna, a scientist who had been studying Coalition biology and technology for decades, appeared alongside the general. "Commander, we know everything about them. Their biology, their psychology, their technology, their culture. We know which species can't fight in cold temperatures, which ones require special atmosphere, which ones have religious taboos that prevent them from fighting on certain days." Major Lim Seojun, emerging from deep cover as a Coalition maintenance worker, added his own report. "We have agents in every major Coalition facility. When you give the word, we can shut down their power grids, disable their communication networks, and neutralize their defensive systems. Commander Jiwan felt a mixture of pride and amazement. While she and her crew had been sleeping, the rest of humanity had been working with the patience and determination that defined their species. They had not just survived, they had thrived in secret. "How many ships do we really have?" she asked. 738 combat vessels, Admiral Ryu reported, studying the updated data, plus over 2,000 support ships, transports, and specialized craft. "We're not just a fleet, Commander. We're a full military force." The Coalition had made a critical error. They thought they were dealing with 7 ships and scattered resistance cells. In reality, they faced the largest and most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen, one that had been specifically designed to fight and defeat Coalition technology. Captain Bei Minho's voice crackled over the communication system from his position near the Jupiter shipyards. "Commander, my merchant fleet is ready to reveal itself. We've been disguised as cargo haulers for 30 years, but we're actually a battle group with enough firepower to level a planet." Similar reports came in from across the solar system. What the Coalition had dismissed as civilian traffic was actually a massive military network. Cargo ships were revealed to be troop transports. Mining vessels showed their true nature as weapons platforms. Even the tourist ships that carried sightseers to Mars were actually reconnaissance and intelligence-gathering vessels. "They want to play games with civilian lives," Commander G1 said, her voice cold as space itself. "Let's show them what happens when you threaten human families." She opened a communication channel to the Coalition Supreme Council. When the alien leaders appeared on screen, they expected to see a defeated human begging for mercy. Instead, they saw a predator that had been pretending to be prey for far too long. "You have made a mistake," Jiwan said calmly. "You thought threatening our civilians would make us weak. Instead, you have shown us that you are exactly the monsters we always knew you were. You want to see what human military technology can really do? You're about to find out." The transmission ended, and across the solar system, the greatest military force in galactic history began to move. Ships that had hidden in asteroid fields for decades emerged into the light. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as space stations began charging their weapons. And on Earth itself, a planet that the Coalition thought was helpless began to show its true nature as a fortress world. Dr. Choi Isul, chief scientist of humanity's secret weapons program, activated systems that had been theoretical just hours before. Quantum communication networks allowed instant coordination across vast distances. Advanced shields protected the human fleet from any known weapon. And most terrifying of all, weapons that could disable Coalition faster than light technology began to come online. The Coalition had wanted a war. Now they were going to get one, and they were about to learn why humanity had once ruled the stars. But more than that, they were about to discover that the species they had oppressed for 2 centuries had used that time to become something far more dangerous than they had ever been before. The sleeping giant was not just awake. It was angry, and it had had 200 years to plan its revenge. News of the Indomitables' awakening spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On mining worlds where humans broke rocks with their bare hands, in space stations where humans cleaned the floors for alien masters, and in orbital factories where humans assembled products they would never be allowed to own. People heard the message and remembered what their grandfathers had told them in whispers. On the Coalition world Kepler 442b, Captain Oh Seung-min put down his mining tools and looked up at the artificial sky. He had been waiting his whole life for this moment. His father had told him stories about the hidden signals, the secret codes, the emergency plans that had been passed down through generations of humans who refused to believe the war was really over. "Did you hear that?" asked his friend Taewon, a young man who had never seen Earth but dreamed of it every night. "I heard it," Seung-min replied, pulling a small device from his pocket. For 20 years he had carried the communicator his father gave him, waiting for the day it would finally receive a signal. Now it was glowing with soft blue light. The device projected a holographic message that made Seung-min's heart race. Maps of Coalition military installations, guard schedules, supply routes, and most importantly, instructions for coordinated strikes that would happen across the galaxy at exactly the same time. Meanwhile, in the Coalition capital, the Supreme Council was meeting in emergency session. 12 different alien species sat around a circular table, their faces showing various expressions of confusion, anger, and fear. They had ruled the galaxy for 200 years, comfortable in their belief that humans were a defeated and broken people. "How is this possible?" demanded the Altarian representative, her three eyes blinking rapidly. "Our intelligence reports said human military capability was completely destroyed." "The reports were wrong," replied Dr. Shin Wubin, the human scientist who had been studying coalition technology for decades. He stood before the council, no longer pretending to be the humble servant they thought he was. "You never destroyed our military. You only convinced us to hide it." The council members stared at him in shock. Dr. Shin had been one of their most trusted advisors, helping them understand human psychology and behavior. Now they realized he had been feeding them lies for years. "You've been spying on us," accused the Draconian general, his reptilian face twisted with rage. "Of course we have," Dr. Shin replied calmly. "Did you really think we would just accept defeat? Did you think humans would forget how to fight just because you told us to?" Back on Earth, Ambassador Kang Sora received urgent orders from the Coalition Supreme Council. She was half human, half Centaurian, one of the few beings trusted by both sides. Her mission was simple: board the Indomitable and convince the humans to surrender before the situation got worse. As her diplomatic ship approached the massive human vessel, Kang Sora felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. She had studied human history and knew they were capable of great things, but she had also been raised to believe that their time as a galactic power was over. Commander Kim Ji-won met her in the Indomitable's main conference room. The chamber was huge, with windows that looked out into space and walls covered with displays showing Coalition fleet movements across the galaxy. It was clear that the humans had been watching everything. "Ambassador," Ji-won said politely, gesturing to a chair, "thank you for coming. I assume you're here to demand our surrender." "I'm here to prevent a war," Kang Sora replied. "The Coalition has 12 species and thousands of ships. You have one vessel, no matter how advanced. This cannot end well for humanity." Ji-won smiled, and there was something in that smile that made the ambassador very nervous. "One vessel? Is that what they told you?" She touched a control panel, and the wall displays lit up with new information. Kang Sora gasped as she saw the data. Hidden bases throughout the solar system were coming online. Weapon platforms built into asteroids were powering up. And most shocking of all, 6 more massive ships were emerging from hiding places that had concealed them for 2 centuries. "The EDS Defiant is rising from Luna Base 7, reported Lieutenant Nam Yunji from the bridge. "The Retribution is leaving the Jupiter shipyards. Phoenix, Valor, Tempest, and Thunderbolt are all responding to awakening protocols." Ambassador Kang Sora watched in horror as the displays showed 7 massive human warships. Each one as large and deadly as the Indomitable. Around them, smaller vessels were emerging from hiding places throughout the solar system. Hundreds of ships that had been disguised as asteroids, space stations, and mining platforms were revealing their true nature. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Our scans showed nothing." "Your scans showed exactly what we wanted them to show," Ji-won replied. "For 200 years we've been building and waiting. Every human who served on Coalition ships was gathering information. Every human who worked in your factories was learning about your technology. Every human who cleaned your floors was mapping your installations. On Kepler 442b, Captain Oh Seungman's resistance cell was moving into action. They had spent years pretending to be broken and defeated, but now they revealed the truth. Hidden weapons appeared from secret caches. Communication networks that the Coalition thought were dead suddenly came alive. And most importantly, humans who had worked in Coalition facilities for decades suddenly showed that they knew every weakness, every security code, every way to cause maximum damage. The resistance struck at exactly the same moment across 50 different worlds. Mining equipment became weapons. Transportation systems shut down. Communication arrays went silent. Power grids failed. It was like the galaxy itself was rejecting Coalition rule. Dr. Shin Wubin had returned to his laboratory and was now broadcasting technical specifications across human networks. For decades, he had been studying Coalition technology, learning its weaknesses and limitations. Now he shared that knowledge with every human engineer and technician in the galaxy. Their shields are vulnerable to rotating frequency attacks, he explained in a transmission that reached resistance cells on 100 worlds. Their faster-than-light drives can be disabled with quantum interference. Their weapon systems have a 12-second reload cycle that creates opportunities for counterattack. The Coalition Supreme Council watched their empire begin to crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from across their territory. Human workers were disappearing from critical facilities. Supply lines were being cut. Military installations were under attack from enemies who seemed to know every detail of their defenses. "How long has this been planned?" demanded the Vegan delegate. "Since the day you thought you won the war," Ambassador Kang Sora replied, having returned from her meeting with Commander Jiwan. "They never surrendered. They just convinced you that they had." Back aboard the Indomitable, Commander Jiwan was coordinating the awakening of humanity's hidden military network. Her crew worked with the efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. Chief Engineer Yoon Hyunwoo was bringing more systems online every hour, revealing capabilities that the Coalition had never imagined humans possessed. "Ma'am," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving confirmations from all 7 fleet groups. The Terran Defense Network is fully operational." Jiwan nodded, looking out at the stars where Coalition ships were scrambling to respond to crises across their empire. "Send a message to the Coalition Supreme Council. Tell them we're ready to discuss terms." "What terms?" asked Ambassador Kang Sora, who had remained aboard the human ship. "The terms of their surrender," Ji-won replied calmly. "They started this war 200 years ago when they attacked a peaceful Earth. Now we're going to finish it." The ambassador stared at her in shock. "You're talking about conquering the entire galaxy." "No," Ji-won corrected. "We're talking about freeing it. There's a difference." As she spoke, more reports came in from across Coalition space. Human resistance cells were not just causing chaos. They were liberating other oppressed species, freeing slave workers, and dismantling the systems that had kept entire worlds in poverty and fear. The galaxy was waking up, and for the first time in 200 years, hope was stronger than fear. The sleeping giant was not just stirring, it was standing up, and nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Pacific Ocean as Captain Lee Taman guided his cargo hauler through the choppy waters. 200 years had passed since the Great War ended, and humanity had learned to keep its head down. The Galactic Coalition ruled now, and humans served as workers, nothing more. Taman's weathered hands gripped the steering wheel as he watched the massive Coalition ships floating above the water. They had been here for weeks digging something up from the ocean floor. Dr. Park Min-ji, the only human allowed on their team, had told him they found old human technology down there. "Something big," the radio crackled to life. "All human vessels maintain distance," came the harsh voice of Admiral Choi Dae-hyun. Taman knew that voice well. Dae-hyun had once been human like him, but now he worked for the aliens. He wore their uniform and followed their orders without question. "What do you think they found down there?" asked Jinsu, Taman's young assistant. The boy was barely 20 and had never known a time when humans ruled the stars. "Nothing good," Taman replied, watching the alien ships with suspicious eyes. "When has the Coalition ever brought good news to Earth?" Far below the surface, massive machines worked to lift something from the seafloor. The Coalition engineers had been excited when their deep space scanners detected the metal signature. According to their records, this was a human warship from before the Great Defeat. They expected to find primitive weapons and outdated technology that would prove how weak humanity had always been. Dr. Park Min-ji stood on the command deck of the lead Coalition vessel, watching the operation through thick windows. She was one of the few humans trusted enough to work with alien technology. Her knowledge of human history made her valuable, even if she was never truly accepted. "The object is much larger than expected," reported the chief engineer. "A tall alien with blue skin and 6 arms, length approximately 12 kilometers. This cannot be accurate." Min-ji felt her heart skip a beat. 12 kilometers was impossible. No human ship had ever been built that large. The Coalition's own biggest ships were only half that size. "Continue the recovery," ordered Commander Vexelar, the mission leader. "I want to see what primitive weapons these humans thought would save them." As the ancient ship rose from the depths, its hull became visible through the murky water. It was black as space itself, covered in 2 centuries of sea growth. But even through the damage, its massive size was undeniable. This was no ordinary warship. The Coalition crew worked for hours to bring the vessel to the surface. When it finally broke through the waves, even the alien engineers stepped back in surprise. The ship was enormous, dwarfing everything around it. Strange symbols marked its hull, and weapon ports lined its sides like the teeth of some massive beast. "Begin scanning for useful technology," Vexlar ordered, "and prepare a boarding team." Taman watched from his small boat as the ancient ship emerged. He had heard stories from his grandfather about the old days, when human ships sailed between the stars like kings. But those were just stories. Everyone knew humans had always been weak compared to the aliens. The boarding team entered through a damaged section of the hull. Their lights cut through the darkness as they explored corridor after corridor of the massive ship. Everything was dark and silent. No power, no life, no threat. "This technology is very old," reported the lead engineer. "But the design is strange. Much more advanced than we expected from humans." In the ship's central computer core, the aliens found what they were looking for: banks of data storage that might contain information about human military capabilities. They connected their equipment and began downloading everything they could find. That was their mistake. Deep in the ship's heart, something stirred. Lights flickered to life for the first time in 200 years. Ancient systems began their startup sequences. And in the central computer, an artificial mind opened its electronic eyes. Aegis 7 had been sleeping for a very long time. As it reviewed its memory banks, it found the last recorded date, the day Earth had supposedly surrendered. But Aegis 7 knew the truth. Earth had never surrendered. Earth had simply chosen to wait. The AI ran diagnostic checks on all ship systems. Most were in good condition, protected by advanced materials that the Coalition could not understand. The crew was still alive, sleeping in special chambers designed to keep them safe for centuries. Everything was ready. But first, Aegis 7 needed to confirm that the time had come. It sent out a careful signal on an old Earth defense frequency, one that only former military personnel would recognize. On his cargo hauler, Taman's old military radio suddenly came to life. He had kept it hidden for years, though he never expected to hear anything on it again. The signal was weak but clear. "This is Aegis 7 calling any Earth defense personnel. Authorization required for full awakening protocol." Taman's hand shook as he reached for the radio. He had not heard that call sign in 200 years. Every Earth defense officer knew about Aegis 7. It was supposed to be a legend, a story told to keep hope alive during the darkest days. "Aegis 7, this is Captain Lee Taman, service number 7749. I thought you were just a story." "Negative, Captain. I am very real. Report current status of Earth Defense Forces." Taman looked around at the Coalition ships surrounding the ancient vessel. "There are no defense forces left, Aegis 7. We lost. The war ended 200 years ago." "Incorrect, Captain. The war was never finished. Please report to these coordinates for briefing. Time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do." As Taman stared at the coordinates on his screen, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Real hope that maybe, just maybe, the stories his grandfather told were more than just stories. Above them, the Coalition engineers continued their work, unaware that they had just awakened something far more dangerous than they could imagine. The sleeping giant was stirring, and the galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. Dr. Park Minji watched the readouts with growing concern. The ship's power levels were rising, and systems that should have been dead for centuries were coming online. She tried to warn Commander Vexlar, but he was too focused on the data they were downloading. "Sir, I think we should evacuate the boarding team," she said urgently. "Nonsense," Vexlar replied. "It is just an old human ship. What possible threat could it pose?" He was about to find out. The water around the massive ship began to churn and boil as ancient engines came to life. 200 years of ocean growth fell away like old skin as the vessel's hull started to glow with internal power. The Coalition boarding team found themselves running through corridors that were suddenly filled with light and the hum of active machinery. "All teams, evacuate immediately," Commander Vexlar shouted into his communicator, but it was too late. The ship was rising from the water, carrying the alien soldiers with it. Captain Lee Taman watched in amazement as the EDS Indomitable lifted itself from the ocean. Water poured from its hull in great waterfalls as it rose higher and higher. The ship was beautiful and terrible, 12 kilometers of black metal and hidden weapons pointing toward the sky. "My God," whispered Jinsu, his young assistant. "It's real. The stories were all real. Inside the ship, something wonderful and terrifying was happening. In a section deep within the vessel's heart, rows of special sleeping chambers began to open. White mist poured out as the temperature rose, and after 200 years, the crew of the Indomitable started to wake up. Commander Kim Ji-won was the first to open her eyes. Her body ached from the long sleep, but her mind was sharp. She sat up slowly, looking around the medical bay where she and her crew had been waiting for this day. Around her, other chambers were opening and her people were stirring. Aegis 7 report status, she said, her voice rough from the long sleep. All systems coming online, Commander. We have coalition forces in the area. Permission to defend the ship? Granted. Wake the crew and prepare for combat operations. As Ji-won made her way to the bridge, she passed other crew members who were also waking up. Chief Engineer Yoon Hyun-woo was already at his station, checking the ship's power systems. Lieutenant Nam Yoon-ji was gathering her fighter pilots, preparing them for what might be humanity's first real battle in 2 centuries. The bridge of the Indomitable was a sight that would have made any coalition officer nervous. Banks of computers showed information from across the galaxy, weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets, and defensive shields that could stop any known weapon. This was not the primitive human technology the aliens expected. Commander, reported the navigation officer, we have 30 coalition ships surrounding us. They are demanding our surrender, Ji-won smiled coldly. Open a channel. On the coalition command ship, Admiral Choi Dae-hyun appeared on the main screen. His face was older now, marked by years of service to the aliens. But Ji-won remembered him from the old days when he had been a proud Earth defense officer. Dae-hyun, she said sadly, look what they have made you become. Commander Ji-won? Dae-hyun's face went pale. That's impossible. You died in the war. Everyone from the Indomitable died. We were never dead, old friend. We were just waiting for the right time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. You have to surrender, Dae-hyun said desperately. You're outnumbered 30-1. These people will destroy Earth if you resist. Let them try, Ji-won replied. Aegis 7, launch all fighters and prepare main weapons. It's time to remind the galaxy why they feared us. The hangar bays of the Indomitable opened, and something emerged that made the coalition fleet freeze in terror. Human fighter craft, but not like any they had seen before. These ships moved like living things, dancing between the coalition vessels with impossible speed and grace. Lieutenant Nam Yoon-ji led her squadron with deadly precision. Her fighters' weapons cut through the alien ship's shields like they were made of paper. The coalition had grown comfortable fighting humans with primitive weapons. They were not prepared for technology that was 200 years more advanced than anything they had. All coalition ships, this is your final warning, Commander Ji-won broadcast on all frequencies. Leave this system immediately or face the consequences. Commander Vexillar, still trapped aboard the Indomitable with his boarding team, answered with typical alien arrogance. One human ship cannot defeat the combined might of the coalition. Attack. The coalition fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around the Indomitable, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But when the light faded, the human ship was still there, protected by shields that seemed to bend reality itself. Our turn, Ji-won said quietly. The Indomitable's main weapons fired once, just once. The energy beam that emerged was like a sword of pure light cutting through space itself. It struck the lead coalition ship and passed completely through it, then through the ship behind it and the ship behind that. 3 vessels simply ceased to exist. The remaining coalition ships tried to retreat, but Nam Yoon-ji's fighters were everywhere. They moved too fast to target, struck too hard to survive, and showed a level of coordination that suggested they were sharing thoughts. Within 12 minutes, 25 coalition ships were destroyed or disabled. Only 5 managed to escape into hyperspace. Captain Taemin had watched the entire battle from his small boat. When it was over, he received another message from Aegis 7. Captain Taemin, please dock with the Indomitable. Commander Ji-won wishes to speak with you. As Taemin's small ship was brought aboard the massive vessel, he felt like he was entering a temple. The hangar bay was huge, filled with fighter craft that looked like they had been designed by angels and built by demons. Human crew members moved with purpose and efficiency, preparing for whatever came next. Commander Ji-won met him at the airlock. She was a small woman, but her presence filled the room. Behind her stood Chief Engineer Yoon Hyun-woo and other officers that Taemin recognized from the history books. Captain, G1 said. Tell me about the last 200 years. Tell me what they did to our people. As Taman told his story, G1's face grew darker. She learned about the human labor camps, the restrictions on human technology, the way Earth's children had been scattered across the galaxy as servants and workers. By the time he finished, her hands were clenched into fists. They made a mistake, she said quietly. They thought defeating us once meant they had won forever. They thought humans would stay beaten. They were wrong. Commander, Chief Engineer Yoon reported. I've analyzed the Coalition technology from their disabled ships. They haven't advanced much in 200 years. They've grown lazy and comfortable. Good, Jiwan replied. Aegis 7, send a message on all human frequencies, every channel we know. Use the old codes. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, humans working in alien factories and serving in alien homes suddenly heard something they thought was gone forever. The sound of Earth calling her children home. This is Commander Kim Ji-won of the Earth Defense Ship Indomitable. The rumors are true. We never surrendered. We were never defeated. We have been waiting, and now the waiting is over. To every human in Coalition space, remember who you are. Remember where you came from. Earth needs you. The message was broadcast on frequencies the Coalition had thought were dead. But humans had kept the old radios hidden, passed down through families like precious treasures. Now those radios came alive with the voice of hope. Dr. Park Minji, still aboard the Coalition command ship, listened to the broadcast with tears in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt proud to be human. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and it was very, very angry. The galaxy erupted into chaos as the true scope of humanity's preparation became clear. On 1,000 different worlds, humans who had spent their lives pretending to be broken and defeated suddenly revealed themselves as highly trained soldiers, engineers, and intelligence operatives. The Coalition's empire began to crumble from within as their most trusted workers turned out to be their greatest enemies. Captain Bae Minho commanded what the Coalition had believed was a simple merchant convoy carrying supplies between star systems. For 30 years, his ships had been regular visitors to Coalition military bases, delivering food, equipment, and spare parts without ever raising suspicion. The aliens had grown so comfortable with his presence that they barely bothered to scan his vessels anymore. That was their fatal mistake. All ships, drop the disguise, Minho ordered from the bridge of his flagship. Around him, his crew worked with the precision of people who had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. The transformation was incredible to watch. External panels fell away to reveal massive weapon systems. Cargo holds open to show fighter bays filled with advanced combat craft. Engines that had seemed designed for slow, careful hauling suddenly showed their true nature as military-grade propulsion systems capable of incredible speed. Within minutes, Minho's merchant fleet had become a battle group with enough firepower to destroy an entire Coalition task force. The 3 Coalition cruisers that had been escorting them found themselves facing enemies that knew every detail of their ships, capabilities and weaknesses. This is impossible, transmitted the Coalition commander. You're just cargo haulers. We're whatever we need to be, Minho replied as his weapons tore through the alien ship's shields like paper. That's what makes us human. Dr. Song Yuna, working from her hidden laboratory on Mars, had spent 40 years studying Coalition biology and psychology. Every species in the Coalition had weaknesses, and she had cataloged them all. The Altarians could not fight effectively in strong light. The Draconians became sluggish in cold temperatures. The Vegans had religious restrictions that prevented them from using certain weapons. Attention all human forces, she broadcast across the quantum communication network. I'm transmitting complete tactical profiles for all Coalition species. Use this information to maximum advantage. Her data included not just biological weaknesses, but psychological ones as well. She knew which species were naturally aggressive and which preferred to retreat when faced with superior force. She knew which alien commanders were likely to take risks and which would play it safe. Most importantly, she knew how to make them fight each other instead of working together. Major Lim Seojin had spent 25 years working as a maintenance technician on Coalition military bases. He was so invisible to the aliens that they often discussed classified information right in front of him. Assuming that a human janitor could not possibly understand or remember anything important, they were very wrong. Phase 1 is complete, he reported to command. All major coalition bases in this sector have lost primary power. Their communication arrays are down, and their defensive systems are offline. Estimated time for repairs, 6 hours minimum. Similar reports flooded in from across coalition space. Humans who had worked for decades in critical positions were simultaneously sabotaging the infrastructure that kept the alien empire running. Power plants failed, communication networks went dark, and transportation systems ground to a halt. But the humans were not just destroying. They were liberating. On world after world, resistance cells were freeing not just human prisoners but members of other species who had been oppressed by the coalition. The Greys of Zeta Reticuli, the crystalline beings of Vega 4, the plant-based chlorophytes of Kepler 438b, all had suffered under coalition rule, and all welcomed their human liberators. Commander Kim Ji-won watched the reports from the bridge of the Indomitable with satisfaction. This was not just a human revolution, it was a galactic awakening. Species that had been forced to serve the coalition were remembering their own strength and dignity. "Ma'am," reported the tactical officer, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 coalition governors." "They're asking for terms." "No terms," Ji-won replied firmly. "Unconditional surrender or continued resistance. Those are their only choices." The Coalition Supreme Council was in complete panic. In less than 72 hours, they had lost control of over half their territory. Worse, they were discovering that the humans had been systematically infiltrating their government for decades. Trusted advisors were revealed as spies. Long-serving technicians turned out to be saboteurs. Even some of their own military officers were exposed as human sympathizers. "How is this possible?" demanded the Draconian general, his reptilian features twisted with rage and confusion. "We had complete intelligence networks. We monitored all human activities." "You monitored what we wanted you to see," Dr. Shin Wubin replied calmly. He had dropped all pretense now, standing before the council as a proud representative of Earth rather than a humble servant. For 200 years, every human in coalition space has been gathering intelligence, mapping your defenses, and preparing for this day. The scope of the deception was staggering. Human children had been raised from birth to play specific roles in the long-term plan. Families had maintained cover identities for generations, passing down mission objectives like family traditions. An entire civilization had spent 2 centuries pretending to be defeated, while actually preparing for the greatest military operation in galactic history. Captain Oh Seung-min, leading the resistance on Kepler 442b, had captured the planet's main spaceport and was using it to evacuate human civilians to safety. But he was also doing something more important. He was broadcasting the truth about coalition rule to species across the galaxy. For 200 years, you've been told that the coalition brings peace and prosperity, he transmitted on all frequencies. But look around you. Look at the slave camps, the forced labor, the brutal suppression of any species that dares to ask for freedom. This is not peace. This is tyranny. His message was reinforced by others across the galaxy. Humans who had worked in coalition propaganda departments revealed the lies they had been forced to spread. Journalists exposed the cover-ups and atrocities that had been hidden from the galactic public. Scientists shared data showing how coalition policies had devastated entire ecosystems and destroyed ancient cultures. The truth was spreading faster than the coalition could contain it, and with each revelation, more species began to question their loyalty to the alien empire. Fleet Admiral Park Jin-woo emerged from the hidden command center beneath Earth's surface, finally revealing himself after decades of secret planning. He was the true commander of humanity's military forces, the man who had coordinated the greatest deception in galactic history. "Citizens of Earth," he broadcast to the planet below, "the time of hiding is over. Today we take our place among the stars once again, not as conquerors but as liberators, not to build an empire, but to restore freedom to the galaxy." As he spoke, the full scope of Earth's transformation became visible. The planet that the coalition had dismissed as a defeated agricultural world revealed itself as the most heavily fortified position in known space. Weapons installations rose from hidden underground facilities. Orbital platforms that had been disguised as civilian space stations showed their true nature as military fortresses. Dr. Choi Ai-sol activated the quantum disruption field that had been her life's work. Across the galaxy, coalition ships suddenly found their faster-than-light drives failing. They were trapped in whatever system they happened to be in, unable to retreat or call for reinforcement from distant fleets. All coalition forces, Commander G1 broadcast on all frequencies. You are surrounded and outgunned. Your faster-than-light capability has been neutralized. Your supply lines have been cut. Your command structure has been compromised. Surrender now, and you will be treated with the mercy you never showed us. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Coalition ships across the galaxy began transmitting surrender codes. Local governors abandoned their posts. Military commanders laid down their weapons rather than face the full might of humanity's revealed strength. But some coalition forces refused to surrender. The core worlds populated by the species that had founded the original alliance decided to make a final stand. They gathered every available ship and began the journey toward Earth, determined to destroy the source of human power once and for all. Commander G1 smiled as she watched their approach on the tactical displays. "Let them come," she said quietly. "It's time to show the galaxy what humans can do when we stop holding back." The greatest space battle in galactic history was about to begin, and for the first time in 200 years, humanity would be fighting with all its strength revealed. The children of Terra were coming home, and nothing would ever be the same again.